Hi everyone, in this video I'll be talking about how implementing a Paleo Veg diet can help treat eczema. Number 2, what to look out for in a blood test when you're trying to treat eczema. Number 3, allergies that eczema patients commonly experience. Number 4, understanding how food intolerance testing can help to treat eczema. In my previous video, I talked about how functional medicine helped me understand ways to treat eczema. So I'll be detailing these following 4 points in this current video. So now the first point I would like to explain to you is leaky gut and why implementing a Paleo Veg diet helped me solve leaky gut problem. So what is leaky gut? Leaky gut means that your intestinal lining has holes that allows for undigested food particles, bacteria, and other substance to enter your bloodstream where they don't belong. So if you want to know what a leaky gut looks like, refer to this diagram. On the left, you have a healthy gut. On the right, you have a leaky gut. Now, when food particles enter your system, in the case of leaky gut, your immune system reacts very aggressively towards these food particles, and this triggers an immune response. What your immune system is trying to do is actually trying to protect you. But when this immune system gets triggered repeatedly over and over again, it can lead to systemic inflammation. And personally, I feel that eczema is a manifestation of systemic inflammation in your body. Now you may be asking, what causes leaky gut? Leaky gut is caused by pro-inflammatory foods, such as genetically modified foods, which is wheat, corn, soy, highly processed vegetable oil, refined sugar and carbohydrates, additives and preservatives in processed food. Number 2, chronic stress. Number 3, a lack of healthy gut bacteria, and especially for those people that consume a lot of antibiotics. Number 4, an overload of toxins in your system that comes from, for example, cosmetic products, cleaning products, environmental toxins, and pollution. Now you may be asking, how do we fix leaky gut? The first step is to remove foods and factors that damage the gut. Number 2 is to replace it with healing foods. Number 3 is to repair with specific supplements. Number 4 is to rebalance your gut with probiotics. Now this is the background information that I wanted to talk to you about before I proceed with the next step. Now, the reason why I talk so extensively about leaky gut is because when I was doing my research through websites, through books, a lot of the resources talk about the same thing, which is your health begins at your gut, and then anything that happens in your gut starts manifesting in your skin. So, now I came across this terminology when I was reading the book called The Paleo Manifesto that was written by John Duran. Now, I would encourage you to take a look at this book and read it for further information. What is the Paleo Veg Diet? So, the Paleo diet essentially means that you basically eat like your Paleolithic ancestors. Now, Paleo era happened before the agricultural era. So, what does this diet essentially mean? Number 1, you cut out all grains from your diet. This includes wheat, rye, barley, oats, corn, and yes, even rice. Now, cutting out rice may be a little bit jarring for some people, but because personally for me, I felt that I'm in Asia, I've been consuming rice all my life, but this was a very drastic shift in the diet change. Now, for some of you, cutting out other grains may be enough to help you in your recovery from eczema. But personally for me, I found that when I cut out rice, it helped to completely speed up my recovery. Now, the reasons why you should cut out grain from your diet, you can refer back to the book, The Paleo Manifesto by John Duran. And also, any paleo diet advocates such as Lauren Cordain. Number 2, cut out all vegetable, hydrogenated, and partly hydrogenated oils, including margarine, soybean, corn oil, peanut oil, canola oil, safflower oil, and sunflower oil. Switch over to coconut oil. Now the third item is to eliminate added sugars and all packaged food and drinks. Now, as a rule of thumb, if a food and beverage comes to you in a box, don't eat it, because additives and preservatives have been added to the product to ensure a long shelf life. So basically, when you're in a supermarket, you have to basically go to the perimeter outside of the supermarket where you buy fresh produce. Number 4, eliminate dairy products. Now, the Paleo diet does allow for meat intake. However, I made a slight deviation from the Paleo diet and called it a Paleo Veg Diet. Now, why is it that I choose to eat Paleo Veg Diet? The reason why I decided to do a hybrid of the Paleo diet and the vegetarian diet, because from the age of 7, I was a vegetarian and I'm still vegetarian. Now, the reason why I choose to eat Paleo Veg is because the Paleo diet talks about sourcing for animals that are not grain-fed, are not raised on antibiotics, are not raised on growth hormones. And it can be very difficult nowadays to actually source for this kind of meat products. Because, industrial farming means that it's more cheaper and affordable. However, what is important is that if you're not raising the animal itself, you have no control about what goes into the animal system. And in some cases, suppliers of meat products can tell you that the animal is grass-fed. However, close to the slaughtering time, the animal actually will be fed grains. So prior to starting on this diet, I basically consulted with my GP and we did a blood work test. And then after looking at the blood work result, he subsequently suggested embracing this form of diet. Now, I have to stress that I'm not a medical professional, and this sharing video is actually to share what worked for me in terms of treating eczema. And I have to stress that you should always consult your doctor, do the appropriate blood test before embarking on this diet change. Now, you may ask, is there any food that you should avoid? Yes, personally, I avoid nightshades, which are tomatoes, white potatoes, eggplant, okra, and peppers. Basically, I cut off nightshades from my diet during my initial recovery from eczema, and subsequently, once I recovered from eczema, I then slowly reintroduced things such as tomatoes, white potatoes. I've tried reintroducing peppers such as capsicum, but I found that I wasn't really my system wasn't able to handle capsicum. So I would say that during your initial recovery from eczema, try to avoid nightshades as much as possible. Then, should you then recover and then, get clear skin, then maybe you may want to try reintroducing them to see whether your system is very sensitive to nightshades. Second type of food which you should try to avoid is pesticide-filled vegetables. Now I do understand that not everybody can afford organic and it can get really pricey sometimes, but I would say personally as a guiding point, I looked at the Dirty Dozen list on the internet. Now, the Dirty Dozen list is basically a list of 12 vegetables and fruits that have high chances of getting contaminated with pesticide. So I basically try to avoid those vegetables and fruits in that list and opt for the Clean 15 list, which is basically also a list of 15 fruits and vegetables that have the least amount of pesticide in them. You may be asking, why does a Paleo Veg diet help with treating eczema? Now, a Paleo Veg diet helps with treating eczema because it basically reteaches you that to return the way we are supposed to eat. Now, by not consuming junk food, you are able to then let your gut heal and also start your recovery process. So now you may be asking, what is it do I eat on a daily basis? Well, I eat sweet potatoes, I eat mixed vegetables cooked with coconut oil. I also recently like split peas, yellow peas, which I cook and the consistency ends up like being a little bit of a porridge form. And also I do consume a lot of coconut oil, which about say 5 to 6 tablespoons of coconut oil and I mix it with my meals together because it's a little bit easier. I'll be sharing with you the coconut oil brand that I use, which is not from the supermarket, which is, now personally speaking, I prep my meals daily. I cook my breakfast and lunch together, which is basically sweet potatoes, mixed vegetables, and sometimes split pea porridge. Now, I prep my meals before I go to work. One thing I found very important when it comes to healing from eczema is to control your diet as much as possible. And I found that recovery really helped when I was able to ensure 100% that I was sticking to the Paleo Veg Diet. Now, when it comes to dinner time, I basically cook a different variety of vegetables. I find that with embracing Paleo Veg Diet and also understanding how diet impacts your health, it is very important to realize that all this while we have been conditioned by massive marketing by manufacturers of food products to think that, in the breakfast time you should eat something different, for example, cereal or toast or things like that. And the lunchtime you should eat something different as well. Now, the main mindset I had to learn when I was embracing this diet change was that food is your fuel. And there shouldn't be any restriction as to what you can eat, at what time can you eat, as long as the food serves your recovery process in treating eczema. Now, what are the 2 principles that I use when it comes to food and thinking and changing my mindset about food? Do not eat anything past 8 hours of it being prepared. Now, this simple principle itself will help you to cut down on consumption of processed food and beverages. Number 2, aim to eat vegetables 4 to 5 different colors in every single meal. Now, keeping these 2 simple principles when it comes to food, I was able to change the way I thought about food. Now, you may be asking, did I experience any food cravings when I first started on this diet? Yes. My number 1 weakness was Italian food. And in high school, I used to eat bowls of pasta slathered with tomato sauce, slathered with Parmesan cheese, and it was the highlight of my weekend. But when I embarked on this diet and talked to my GP, and he basically talked to me for about 1 hour and explained to me why is it so important to embark on the diet change. So basically, when I first started going on this diet change, my strategy was not to go to any places that served pizza and pasta, because I felt at the time I wasn't strong enough to withstand temptation. Now you may be asking, since the paleo diet talks about no grains including rice, how was transitioning from a heavy rice diet to no rice diet worked? Now, I have to be upfront and say that the initial 2 to 3 weeks cutting off grains from my diet, including rice, meant that I did feel an energy drop. Now, this is because transitioning from using sugar as a fuel to fat as a fuel meant that my body had to take time to readjust. But what I find is that those that have embarked on this embracing a paleo diet, they also said the same thing. The initial 2 to 3 weeks, they feel a little bit of an energy drop, but subsequently after that, their body was able to use fat as a fuel to burn. By the sharing of a lot of people that have embraced paleo diet, they also talk about not only paleo diet has helped them with skin issues, autoimmune issues such as eczema, it also helped them reverse a lot of other health problems as well. So they have been also sharing that despite that there is some sort of transitioning issue slightly early on for about 2 to 3 weeks, they found that the paleo diet has helped them remarkably. Now you may be asking the $1 million question: how long and how strict you have to be on the paleo diet? Very good question. Well, personally, I feel that pretty much depends on now how extensive is the eczema for your body, and also how long have you been experiencing eczema. Personally, for me, I took about 1.5 years to 2 years having a very strict paleo veg diet because I had been experiencing eczema for about 10 years, and also before I started the diet, I had basically very bad eczema from face up to my feet. Now, after this 1.5 years to 2 years period, yes, I would say I was tempted to start trying foods that I didn't try before. For example, things that contain wheat, things that contain dairy. For example, say dumplings, mini cakes. After all, I realized that yes, I'm human, yes, I have cravings. And I guess after like treating eczema and having clear skin, I was very tempted at times to change and to just test out, how much could I eat before I would experience an eczema flare-up. Now, I think the hardest problem that comes across with a major diet change is to sometimes be around food and to like and miss experiencing eating those foods, and to think to yourself that you cannot eat it temporarily because if you do, you experience an eczema flare-up. Another scenario which is probably difficult is that you may be socializing with your family and friends, and sometimes that also includes food, and sometimes it gets difficult when you want to socialize with them but you're around temptation constantly. Now, personally, I feel that it's very important to put your recovery from eczema as the top list of your priority. So that also means that you communicate with your family and friends that, hey, you're going through a diet change, and this diet change is to treat your eczema. And for them to, not be offended. For example, let's say if you're socializing with them, they choose not to eat certain foods because it triggers eczema, for them to be understanding in that sense. And, on the flip side as well, if they do not understand why you have to undergo a diet change, you have to be strong in your own decision to embark on this diet change, because, sometimes they may come up to you and say that, hey, you eat just one cake or one item and suddenly, it's not a big deal, right? It's just one item, it's just so little. But the problem I find with cheating on the Paleo Veg Diet is that you eat one item and then it triggers an eczema flare-up, or it stops your recovery. And although sometimes they don't mean to be mean or cruel or trying to offer you or trying to tempt you with food, you have to understand that ultimately you are the one experiencing the side effects of eating any food that triggers an eczema flare-up. So in that case, sometimes you have to be strong, you have to dig inside for your own inner strength when you're dealing with food. You have to be your own biggest cheerleader. Now, to those people that have come across family members or friends that have dealing with eczema, I would like to say that sometimes if your family member or friends or whoever that's experiencing eczema and has to embark on a strict diet change, I would like to ask you to support them in their diet change, although sometimes you may not realize why they have to go to that extent. Now, also during this period when I was recovering from eczema, I had to understand the linkage between food and also emotional. Because I find that when it comes to food, people tend to reward themselves with food. People tend to use food as a way to suppress their feelings when they're feeling emotional, sad, or angry. And I had to understand that, food sometimes is a trigger, because for some people, it reminds them of a certain childhood memory with their family or friends, for example. Now, initially when I started on this diet, I would say that it was a little bit drastic, and but my family member was very supportive. So I would say that personally, for whoever that's experiencing eczema, the first thing to do is talk to your doctor, get the blood work done, embrace the diet change, and also start immediately, Now, in the case of, let's say let's say you have pretty much recovered from eczema, and you feel there's this temptation whether to try or not to try eating certain foods that you used to avoid. Personally, I feel that I have experimented, and I found that the best results actually come from when I try to stick strictly to a Paleo Veg diet. And I feel that, during the one and a half years to 2 years of a very strict Paleo Veg diet, I do not want to reverse all the hard work I've done to regain my health. So for me, even though right now I've pretty much recovered from eczema, embracing, adopting a Paleo Veg diet is very important to me. And now, if you're asking why is it so important that you stick to a consistent diet and not cheat, is because gut is not like Las Vegas. What happens in your gut does not stay in your gut. It travels to all parts of your body. That's why for recovery reasons, as for recovery from eczema, it's very important to realize that what foods you consume affects your body, including your skin. Now we're done with food. Now next we'll be moving to blood tests. Now the blood work was done by my GP, and he basically talked about 2 items that he wanted to test for inflammation within my body, which was homocysteine, and C-reactive protein. Now, I would like to say that in Dr. Mark Iman's book, mentioned in my previous video, I'll also put the link in the video description below, that he talked about inflammation and also what are the inflammation markers that you can find in the blood test. Now, the inflammation markers is basically to get a reading as to what the inflammation marker in your system is. Now, the other items I also tested with my GP was a thyroid function test. I'll be talking a little bit more about it in my next video. Iron test. In addition to my blood test, I also had done an allergy test, and I found that people with eczema tend to have the same triggers. For example, wheat, egg whites, dairy, seafood, and peanuts. Now, the million-dollar question you probably want to ask is, can you ever eat these foods again? Now, ultimately, I feel that your body will tell you the response whether you can or cannot eat something. However, I find that in your initial recovery from eczema, it's best to abstain 100% from these foods that you're allergic to. Now, once you've recovered from eczema, then up to you if you want to reintroduce this food, reintroduce it a little bit and see what is the reaction with your system. Now, personally, I found that when I consume wheat and dairy, I tend to get a very immediate severe reaction, as in breakouts and also eczema flare-ups, versus peanuts and egg whites are not such a huge trigger for me. Now, basically understanding and implementing a strict paleo veg diet and also avoiding the foods that I was allergic to helped me tremendously in my recovery. However, there was still a little bit of eczema left on my inner elbows. So I had went to see a functional medicine doctor. His clinic is Personal Health Clinic. His name is Dr. Ian Chong. And there's one thing that I came across, which is food intolerance. How is food intolerance different from a food allergy? Now, basically, food allergy happens when the body immune system sees the food as an invader. Now, versus food intolerance happens when the body cannot properly digest the food that is eaten, or a particular food that irritates the digestive system. Now, I had undergo a food intolerance test. Now, this test is pretty interesting because basically my blood was taken, now tested against a range of food items. I think it was about 100 food items, and basically the food intolerance test results looks like this. And the result is ranked based on order of reactivity. Green is normal, yellow is borderline, and red is elevated. So generally, when I got the test result back, now I had spoken to my functional medicine doctor, and he said that avoid these food items in the red, in the elevated and borderline category for 2 months, and then come to see me again, where if you choose to reintroduce this food, it will be best to do an elimination diet, where you introduce the food item slowly, and over the next couple of days you see whether you have a reaction to that food item. Now, from personal experience, I would say that the food intolerance test is a little bit on the pricey side. Now, it's about 2,300 ringgit. And there are certain pros and cons with this food intolerance test. Personally, I felt that the advantage is that you're able to test against a number of food items, about 100 food items. And it's a little bit much more comprehensive than a food allergy test. However, the disadvantage of this test is that the food items tested on this test is more geared towards, I would say, Guaylo food, not so much of Asian food. And I wasn't able to, customize the test, because they also test a lot for meat products, which I did not eat since the age of 7. So in this case, the test wasn't very flexible in the sense I couldn't opt for to take out certain food items that would be tested on. Now, I would find that the reason why I embarked on this food intolerance test was that I was still experiencing a little bit of eczema that was very manageable, and on the inner corners of my elbows. And basically, I found out from this food intolerance test that I was still experiencing a little bit of a leaky gut because I was eating potatoes, carrots, and celery consistently. and it showed up on the elevated category in this test. So I'd spoken to the functional medicine doctor, and I agreed that I would eliminate these foods for a period of time, and then I will also try to have more variety in my diet instead of eating something consistently over and over again. So to recap from this video, I've talked about how embracing a paleo veg diet can help treat eczema tremendously. Now, what to look out for in a blood test, and also talked about the allergies that eczema patients commonly experience, and share with you food intolerance testing. Now, if you found this video useful, or know a family member or a friend who's currently dealing with trying to find way to treat eczema, please share this video with them. If you have a comment or a question about this video, do leave me a comment in the following social media channels which are listed here.